Hello everyone, I'm going to start today on my blue background using an acrylic marker pen. This is acrylic paint that the marker pen puts down, and I'm starting off with a phthalocyanin blue on top of the light blue that I've put down already. And I'm doing that because there's not too much contrast between the background and these first initial lines that I'm putting down. So that means that the outlines, if they are left exposed at the end of the painting, it won't be too jarring. So just very quickly putting in an indication of our sheep here. There's a front leg and another one. And having done that, what I need to do now is introduce a sense of light and dark. So very quickly I'm going to use a burnt umber marker with a rather larger nib to block in the darkest areas. Introduce a little bit of texture here under the neck. I don't want the paint going down too solidly there. And we also need some shadow on the ground as well. So we've got a bit of darkness there now. Having done that, I'm switching to my yellow oxide, and I'm going to block in the sheep, going over that brown while it's still wet, going over the burnt umber. And as I'm doing this, I'm also paying attention to the shape that I'm putting down. So I keep referring to my reference photograph, although I'm working quite quickly because I'm trying to do this in around about 10 minutes. We'll see how it goes. Just want to demonstrate how we can quickly put down the essence of a sheep onto the page. So let's block all of that in. And you can see, if you work quickly, you get some nice blending going on. And there's an ear there. Now, having done that, let's go to the white. Actually, no, we won't use white straight away. We'll use some light blue. I'm going to use some brilliant blue to pick out some areas which aren't completely highlighted but are nevertheless much lighter than we've got. So just give me a moment to prime my marker. So I've got my brilliant blue marker now. That's the name of the colour, not a comment on the pens, although I do really enjoy using these marker pens. And I'm just going to put some texture in here and very loosely still indicate areas of mid shadow on this sheep. Having done that, I'm now going to switch to white, and we're going to pick out some key highlights. And also introduce more of a sense of texture on the sheep's wool. And notice I'm applying the paint very quickly and in short strokes. And the nib isn't too heavily loaded with paint because I don't want a solid block of white coming out. At least not yet. Okay, that's looking reasonable. So what I will do now is use my yellow oxide to block in some regions of the ground. Also take some burnt umber and do the same. And maybe even a little bit of cadmium red. And then I'm going to take my fluorescent green and introduce the existence of a somewhat muddy looking field at the moment. And now I'm going to let that entire painting dry just for a couple of minutes, so I'll be back in a couple of minutes. Next I'm going to use a Prussian blue marker to tighten up some of the lines, but not, I don't want to make them too precisely defined. I just want to make some key lines here and there, just to bring the image together. So we need an eye here, there, and also another one on the other side of the face. And a nostril here. And another one there. A mouth and chin. Just define the lines of the legs a little more clearly. And the fourth leg is actually tucked back in here somewhere, so we better put that in. Now once the eyes are dry, I'm going to put a little bit of yellow on the eyes, because sheep have quite bright yellow eyes when they're in the sun. And we're almost there now. We just need to add a little bit more of a sense of light and dark on the animal's body. So I'm going to go back in with my white marker and just correct the line of the back here, which should have come up a bit higher before, and in fact is catching the light very strongly. And we'll introduce some more texture there with some thicker white paint. The same for the top of the head. Part of the face. All of these areas are catching the light very, very strongly. Now, under normal circumstances, I wouldn't use so much pure white for the highlights. I would usually introduce, a variety of colours to my highlighted areas, but because this is just a quick demonstration, then obviously we have to resort to slightly different techniques compared to our usual way of working. Now let's put some gold paint on this sheep as well. Introduce a little bit of iridescence to the wool. And we must put these touches of yellow on the eyes. And the ear needs to be much more of a pink colour than I originally had it. And we'll put a touch of that colour there as well. Let's go back to our brilliant blue. Touch of white to define the left edge of the nose and chin a little more clearly. And back to my blue again. For the brow. And we still need a little bit more white around the eye here. And then just the lightest of touches of burnt umber, just to introduce a little bit of shadow under the neck of the animal. And in fact, some of that's gone a little bit too heavy, so I just want to lift off a little bit of that while it's still wet. There we go, that's more like it. And finally, just the slightest touch of this orangey pink around the mouth, which just makes it look like he's wearing makes it look like she's wearing a little bit of lipstick. But again, if I just soften that slightly with the tissue, that knocks it back a little bit. And I think we'll call that one, for the purposes of this demo, finished, except I will just add some yellow and green to the field, just to soften the effect of the grass. Because if you remember, we had this rather muddy field, which is still there, but I'm not going to take the yellow to the area where the sheep will be casting a shadow. And that way I can, by blocking in the area surrounding the shadow with the yellow, I can create the illusion that the sheep is casting a shadow. Let's put down, that was some yellow on top, let's put down some of the fluorescent green. And that array of colours that I've put down before, that will show through still, and that's absolutely fine, that's what I want. But we just want to get things looking a little bit more grass-like. And then perhaps, just finally, a few blades of grass catching the light, and a few flowers in the field as well. And now for the final step, I'm just adding a thin wash of Silurian blue acrylic with a brush, and this is going to have the effect of just unifying all of those different textures and colours that I'd included so far. And I'm applying this thin layer of blue, this glaze, to all of the regions of the animal that are in shadow. Just a very thin layer of acrylic. And then we'll just let that thin layer of blue paint dry back. And while that's happening, I'm just going to include a couple of touches of white onto that left hand ear. Still using the same brush. And just feathering on just a very light textured coat of white. And now we just need to let that paint dry. And then finally, just need to define the line of the neck a little more clearly than I had before. So although I said I was going to let the paint dry, I've decided to come back in with some white. So when you think you're close to completing a painting, it's always a good idea to just go back and check the structure of what you've done and ensure that you haven't lost some of that initial structure that you put down, when you've done the later stages. Looking at the painting again, I've decided to add a few more details with the brush, and I'm just putting in some regions of dark purple where I've got very deep shadows, and this eye needs to move a little bit as well, so we'll move that up there. And I need to define the left hand side of the sheep's face here a little better than I have. So I'm going to soften that shadow in a moment, but for now that's working quite well. I've already added a little bit more detail to the mouth. Just putting in, I lost some of those areas of dark shadow that I'd included right near the start. And because of that, the sense of form had been lost a little bit. And now using a flat brush, I just want to put in some fine lines, again indicating the way the wool is falling on the animal. And the legs I now see need a bit of lightening as well. Make them stand out a little bit more. And I think we'll call that one finished. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, please remember to like, comment and subscribe. Any questions at all, I'm always happy to answer those if you want to ask me a question. But in the meantime, I hope to see you next Sunday for the next episode of the Sunday Art Show. Thanks very much for watching.